General Daniel R. Hokanson is the 29th Chief of the National Guard Bureau and a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He is the Defense Department's official channel of communications to the 50 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia on all matters related to the National Guard. General Hokanson is a former Adjutant General of Oregon and is the first to serve as the Chief of the National Guard Bureau in almost 2 decades.
This is an important and pivotal time in the history of the National Guard. We have never been busier or more visible, and our missions have never been more complex or important. What we do now and what we do next will ultimately shape our nation's future. The National Guard has been on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic response. In every state, territory, and the District of Columbia, Guard members are helping their communities fight this invisible enemy. Our National Guard responded to civil unrest in several states and the District of Columbia. As part of a national call for justice and racial equality, our soldiers and airmen were there to protect our First Amendment rights and preserve public safety in the communities where we live. The great value the National Guard brings is they are in our 2,800 communities across the nation every day. They're usually the closest, and we consider them the department's first responder for anything that occurs. Our citizen soldiers and airmen responded to these and other events in the homeland while simultaneously meeting all overseas deployment requirements in support of combatant commands and the National Defense Strategy.
Number Mike Kilo.
Our state partnership program, we have partnerships with 89 nations around the globe. And it not only helps with our combatant commanders, but also with our National Guard, because it gives them the opportunity to train with allies and partners and develop long-term relationships. What makes this possible has not changed since the founding of our National Guard in 1636. And that is the incredible men and women in our formations. They balance their military careers, civilian careers, and their families, and know the sacrifices they must make so we can live true to our motto: always ready, always there. Soldiers, airmen, and families of the National Guard, thank you for spending your Saturday with me from wherever you are across the country or around the globe. I also want to thank NGAUS for hosting this event, being flexible, and putting safety first. One of our greatest strengths as Guardsmen is our ability to adapt to whatever the mission requires, and we see that ingenuity in action today. I'm incredibly honored to serve as your 29th Chief of the National Guard Bureau. As you may have heard in my recent video, I believe this is an important and pivotal time in our history, and what we do now and what we do next will ultimately shape our nation's future. As 2020 has shown us time and again, our work is invaluable to our communities, states, and nation, and we have plenty of work to do. We continue to grapple with a global pandemic that's touched every part of our nation. We're facing a potential economic contraction, both on the main streets of our cities and in the Department of Defense. Meanwhile, our near-peer competitors do not rest. They continue to seek advantages through technology, economic leverage, and other asymmetric means, as we see a resurgence of great power competition. So, how do we claw our way out of this mess? Can we simultaneously preserve peace and maintain combat capability? How can we afford it? It won't surprise you, as a fellow Guardsman, I believe our nation's solution is a National Guard, and I'm clearly not the only one. At West Point's graduation earlier this summer, President Trump said, "I want to thank the men and women of our National Guard who respond with precision to so many recent challenges, from hurricanes and natural disasters to ensuring peace, safety, and the constitutional role of law in our streets." And every soldier and airman is a wealth of civilian skills they bring to the service of our country. In every Guardsman, there is military training that prepares us to face our nation's enemies, help our fellow citizens, and promote peace and order. We multiply our collection of talents and training across the nation in nearly every zip code. Our geography and our unique authorities mean we are effective whenever and wherever we are needed, whether it's the Middle East or Middle America. We always answer our nation's call while balancing our civilian careers, our military careers, and families, showing every single day America's National Guard is a tremendous value to our nation. This year, as interesting as it has been, is just the most recent example of what we have done for over 384 years, delivering combat readiness and response capability and capacity when our nation needs us. You've seen that in the COVID-19 response, in hurricanes and wildfires, in our combat deployments, and in our enduring partnerships from our communities all the way around the world. Everything we're able to do is made possible by our people, our guardsmen, our families, and our civilian employers. Our success is rooted in your individual volunteerism, sacrifice, and professionalism. The excellence you bring to your job every single day, no matter how seemingly small, is what makes the difference. This excellence has been on display all across the country during the unprecedented and ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen it in testing centers, food banks, and nursing homes. We've seen it as we make masks, man call centers, and deliver personal protective equipment. In every state, territory, and the District of Columbia, Guardsmen have stepped up to keep their communities safe and healthy. Although there are countless examples of individual excellence during the COVID-19 epidemic, I want to tell you about one in particular, a story from New York, which was notoriously hit hard in the early days of the outbreak. I want to tell you about New York Army National Guard Specialist Ashley Rodriguez. Specialist Rodriguez joined the Guard when she was 20. She considered joining the active Army, but Specialist Rodriguez was a single mom, and joining the Guard let her join the Army, be a mom, and keep her civilian life too. When COVID-19 ravaged New York, the New York National Guard found themselves with a grim, difficult, and very emotional mission, recovering the deceased. And it was for that very mission Specialist Rodriguez volunteered because she felt she could help make a difference. Though trained as a cable systems installer, she started the Decedent Recovery Mission in late March, working with families in their homes and helping them when they needed it most. She continued this mission even after her daughter and grandmother contracted COVID-19, and I'm very happy to report both fully recovered. Specialist Rodriguez said it was rewarding to see the grateful reactions from the families when the National Guard helped them in their most difficult times and when they were not expecting it. Specialist Rodriguez volunteered for this job because she wanted to make a difference, and she did. When America faces such a profound tragedy, the professionalism of the National Guard and willingness to just be there for those in need speaks volumes. Specialist Rodriguez, your story is a story of countless men and women across the National Guard. You answered the call to serve your country and your community, and it's an honor to serve alongside you. COVID-19 was not the only difficult mission the National Guard faced this year. This spring, violence and destruction accompanied protests across our country. As civil unrest battered our cities, governors activated more than 43,000 National Guardsmen to bring peace and protect civilians' constitutional rights to protest. The Guard had a significant presence here in Washington, D.C. during that time, protecting our nation's monuments. But that's only one part of the story. On June 4th, members of the 113th Air Wing from the D.C. National Guard were posted at the Lincoln Memorial when they heard a cry for help. A woman who had been jogging collapsed at the base of the monument and lay face down, unconscious. Chief Master Sergeant Mark Nicholas, Technical Sergeant Emmanuel Morez, and Staff Sergeant Jason Vaughn sprang into action immediately. They rushed to the victim and assessed her condition. The woman's pulse was weakening, and Staff Sergeant Vaughn, a CPR instructor, sent for an automated external defibrillator from the Park Police. Tech Sergeant Morales began performing chest compressions while Chief Master Sergeant Nicholas found the woman's cell phone and used it to contact her husband immediately. Major Talisha Johnson, a nurse with the 113th Medical Group, arrived within minutes. She checked the woman's pulse, confirmed she wasn't breathing, and resumed chest compressions. For 8 long minutes, National Guardsmen performed CPR and administered AED shocks until the Park Police medical evacuation team arrived. Major Johnson stayed with the woman when she was transported by a Park Police helicopter and continued chest compressions. Less than a minute after they were in the air, the woman began breathing on her own. The woman's husband later called Chief Master Sergeant Nicholas to tell him his wife was stable, and he thanked all the guardsmen who helped save his wife that day. When the 113th Air Wing arrived at the Lincoln Memorial that day, they knew their mission was to protect federal property and the right to peacefully protest. They did not know they would face a life or death emergency, but when the woman collapsed, their training and call to service kicked in. Chief Master Sergeant Nicholas, Tech Sergeant Morales, Staff Sergeant Vaughn, and Major Johnson displayed tremendous heroism, and in doing so, they lived true to our motto of always ready, always there. Excellence begins with a single individual, a soldier or airman, who brings extraordinary commitment and skill to the mission at hand, and that excellence can be contagious. As a team, we can encourage each other to be better, to do more, and to reach ever greater heights. And when we multiply individual excellence across a unit, we can shape the course of history. An example of this is the 30th Infantry Division, which is now the 30th Armored Brigade Combat Team and perhaps best known as Old Hickory. During the Second World War, the 30th landed at Omaha Beach in Normandy and soon found themselves surrounded by German soldiers in the French town of Mortain. The Old Hickory soldiers were outmanned 7-1. They were low on food and ammunition, and for 6 long days they fought back. Every cook, every clerk, every driver, every medic, every guardsman was a rifleman in the heat of battle. They sustained hundreds of casualties, and yet they held the line. The Germans did not advance, and the guardsmen of Old Hickory helped save the Normandy campaign. And before the end of the month, the Allies were able to liberate Paris. This past March, more than 75 years after their heroic fight, the 30th Infantry Division, Old Hickory, received the very prestigious Presidential Unit Citation. Today, the legacy of Old Hickory continues. Last year, the 30th Armored Brigade Combat Team was among the first units deployed to Syria to protect American-held oil fields from the Islamic State. At the time, pundits mused that it was interesting the National Guard was deploying to Syria while active units were on the southwest border of the United States. To us, it was yet another reminder that warfight is our primary mission, and we will always, always answer our nation's call. But answering that call means leaving behind the most important people in our lives, our families. That's why I want to thank the families who empower every one of us to fulfill our missions. It is an unusual time, and we are not only asking our soldiers and airmen to rise to the challenge, we're asking our families to rise with us. And sometimes that's asking a lot, because our families don't choose to put on a uniform. But it's only through their sacrifice that we're able to do what we do, protect our nation and its future, save lives, and help our communities. That's why we must do everything we can to find that sustainable balance for our guardsmen, the families that love us, and the employers that support us. We join the National Guard because it gives us a way to serve our country, provide for our families, and succeed in a civilian career and a military career. But when we lose that balance, we often lose good guardsmen and good families. And when we lose good guardsmen, we lose the most important part of our organization. We cannot and must not forget the importance of supporting our families and employers that make our service possible. Today, you've heard stories of extraordinary guardsmen, Specialist Rodriguez, who volunteered for a difficult mission, members of the 113th Air Wing, whose immediate response saved a woman's life, the legendary Old Hickory Division, who stood steadfast in World War II and whose current formations deployed to Syria. And we remember the selfless sacrifice of our families who stand behind us as we serve. It reminds us the small things that make up our lives add up to something much greater than ourselves. We do not always know we are making a difference, but I can assure you as Guardsmen, you make a difference every single day. You're not just helping with COVID-19 tests, you're giving families peace of mind. You're not just working at a food bank, you're making sure vulnerable families don't go hungry. You're not just handing out water after a hurricane, you're providing comfort in a time of fear. You're not just fighting wildfires, you're protecting the places we call home. You're not just training our allies, you're enabling peace for generations to come. And you're not just supporting stability overseas, you're demonstrating the strength and commitment of America. All our success begins with you, and our job at the National Guard Bureau is to help enable that success. To make this happen and help make that happen this year, we have an incredible leadership team at the National Guard Bureau. Over the next 4 years, we will do everything we can to advocate for you, our Guardsmen, your families, and your employers. Our value as America's National Guard is built on you, the people who support you, and the excellence you bring every single time you put on a uniform. As we have seen all too clearly this year, there is no limit to what our country may ask of us. And we continue to show there is no limit to what we can accomplish. Together, we will remain always ready, always there. Thank you.
Thank you, General Hokanson, for those inspiring words of service and sacrifice of our fellow soldiers and airmen. And I want to just say, as the chairman of the board, a former, and having you as a former adjutant general and a colleague of mine and now serving as a chief, how proud we are of you and your new appointment and confirmation into your position. As with the other 3 members of the Joint Chiefs, we have a process by which we can intake some questions and answers for the chief. And in this case, we've got a few. Sir, so I'd like to start off quickly with a question about this transition you're going through. We know you're in your first month of transition. What is it in this transition you're looking to accomplish, and how is the work with the transition team going?
Okay. Mick, thank you for that question. And when we look at the transition team, unfortunately between confirmation and change of responsibility, we did not have enough time to complete that to the level that I felt was necessary. And so we stood up a transition team that's really taking input really from general officers all the way down to first-term airmen. And we wanted to look across the entire force through a series of questions and the ability to provide them input on the status of where we are, things that folks feel is most important to the organization, so we can balance that and identify the areas where that we can make the most significant difference for the organization at the National Guard Bureau. We're well into that now, and as soon as we get that completed, I'll be sure to share that across the 54 and also at all of our meetings and opportunities that I get to visit with the states.
Thanks, sir. We appreciate the way you've included all of the states and all ranks in this transition as we look for ways to improve the advocacy and support that the National Guard Bureau provides the 54. One of the big initiatives that I know has been discussed specific to the Army is a discussion about the new national defense strategy and this great power competition. We recently received a memo from you just prior to leaving your previous assignment as the Director, Army Guard, about division alignment for training. I want to know what you think about that as we go forward and we build the Army Guard of the future.
So thank you as well. And division alignment for training was one of the great things that I really had an opportunity to work on as the Director of the Army National Guard. And if all of us go back just after the turn of the century, prior to World War I, we had States National Guard. But in response to World War I, we actually mobilized the National Guard and created regional divisions across the country. They created a total of 18 divisions, all of which mobilized and deployed for World War I. If you fast forward to World War II, when we came back from World War II, the division stayed intact. And prior to World War II, we had 19 divisions. 9 of those fought in the European theater of operations and 10 fought in the Pacific. And then after World War II in the 50s and 60s, through multiple changes in the organization of the Army, we really got away from the divisions, and really today, as of last year, we only had 8 division headquarters. But what I realized as the director of the Army National Guard is that we had really almost all of the subordinate elements to create 8 full divisions in the National Guard, and that was really the driving nexus when we saw the National Defense Strategy and the return of great power competition, the need to build capable formations that at any echelon from company to division that can effectively roll right into any active joint force that's engaging or is being tasked with a mission. And so that's one aspect of it. It allows us to continue to fill our role within the National Defense Strategy. It also provides great deterrence by going from 10 full divisions in the Army to 18 full divisions in the Army. Now, one of the great benefits as well behind this is talent management. And if I can just use New Mexico as an example, we have 1-200 infantry battalion, but that's the largest infantry formation in the state of New Mexico. And so as a soldier, your aspirations almost end at a battalion command or battalion command sergeant major. But under the division alignment principle, 2-100 is part of the 41st Brigade in Oregon, which would be part of the 40th Division out of California. And so if that command sergeant major or battalion commander demonstrated the greatest potential within that division, they could be given the opportunity to become a Division G3 or Division Operations Sergeant Major, compete to be a brigade commander or brigade command sergeant major, and potentially one day be a division commander or division command sergeant major. And so what it helps us do is identify our soldiers with the greatest potential and provide them on a limited basis the opportunities to progress to higher levels of leadership. Another advantage to that is if our 8 divisions look as much as possible like the active component divisions, then it will require us to be in the same modernization or ensure that our equipment is interoperable at every level so that our formations are interoperable at every level within the joint force. And also, as force structure changes, it would also drive force structure changes within the National Guard. Ultimately, however, my goal was to have all of our formations, no matter where they are in the Army National Guard, to be part of a division or a corps level structure so that they had a direct connection to our national defense strategy.
Thank you for that, sir. I know here at NGAUS, we look forward to advocating and helping you advance that initiative. I know that in the states and territories and the District of Columbia, we're excited about this pivot to this great power competition and the alignment and what that'll mean for modernization and interoperability of our equipment. And your advocacy through the Army National Guard and as the chief was just outstanding, sir. I just want to say thank you for advancing that to the Secretary of the Army. And now as the chief, we know that you can transport that over to the Air Guard and look at things that are going forward there. One of the challenges that we've been facing in this time with COVID-19 is the idea of many of our guardsmen has had a change to their training schedule, which affects readiness and teleworking. But we've also learned that there's some benefits to what we can do through a distributed environment. Look no further than this conference. I'm wondering what your thought is as we go into the next fiscal year about how we plan to train and ready our formation with an anticipation of a potential, hopefully it never exists, second wave, and how you think we can take some lessons learned from that into our everyday operations as we come out the backside.
Okay. So Mick, thank you. And I actually kind of see this as 2 parts. The first one is a training aspect and the ability of our soldiers to conduct virtual drills or still maintain their individual and unit level readiness under such an environment. And one of the great things is about being part of the 54 is each state has come up with exceptional ideas on how to do this. And initially we all started out finding ways to do that because in many cases some of our guardsmen would lose their employment as a result of COVID if their businesses closed down. And we wanted to make sure that we were still continue to allow them to drill, allow us to continue to pay them, and for those on TRICARE Reserve Select to continue their medical benefits, but also continue to build those points so they get credit for a good year towards their retirement. And so really relied on a lot of the great examples from within the states, and we did share those. And one example I'll share with you is the 1st Brigade 34th Division from the Minnesota Army National Guard, and actually multiple states that were part of their deployment to the National Training Center. In that case, we were able to set up testing prior, keep the folks in a bubble while we get them down to the National Training Center. They were able to conduct their training rotation at the National Training Center, and they did it in an exceptional manner. I was able to visit them there, and I got nothing but positive comments, not only for their ability to do the mission, but also the situation under which the COVID environment that they were able to execute it with such professionalism. So when we look at individual art training and organizational training, we continue to look at that across the country and share what we have learned. Now, with respect to telecommuting, or how we look at distributed ways to do our work, I actually have to kind of smile because in October of last year, we were looking at potentially developing a model that would allow us to telework maybe 10% of the force at the Readiness Center. Little did I know in March that we would get to do that with 90% of our organization. And what we found, for the most part, we were able to still meet all of our mission requirements in support to the 54. Now, there are some cases where we had to put a little bit more emphasis, but I think overall we proved that we could do that. As a result, what I've asked our leadership across the organization to do is take a look, based on what we have learned over the past couple of months, and identify positions and functions that are performed at the National Guard Bureau that don't necessarily need to physically be here. And one of the things that I always thought of as an adjutant general and as an MDay and a regular guardsman was that many of our soldiers or airmen may not be able to come to Washington, D.C. for a Title X opportunity. And so we're looking for opportunities that maybe we could have personnel telework from a state and perform a duty here at the National Guard Bureau, but allow them to stay in their communities potentially where their spouse may have a very good job. They may be too close to the community where they've got extra functions to do there, or they may be caring for a family member. And so we're looking at that as a potential opportunity going forward.
Thanks for that, sir. And we, over the last 4 years, we've been talking about innovation, and I think this was an innovative way for us to integrate the states and territories into the activity that we have at the Bureau. Last thing I want to tee up for you here, sir, is we have some comments and questions that have come in always with all of our chiefs about the recent diversity and inclusion initiatives. And I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about that as you start into your 4-year tenure as the chief, about how you feel that will affect the states, territories, and our readiness, and how we'll become an even greater warfighter.
And Mick, thank you for bringing up a very, very important issue to our entire nation and as well within the National Guard. And we've just recently brought in our new senior enlisted advisor, Chief Master Sergeant Tony Whitehead, and he and I have started our conversations. And actually months ago, when I prepared for my testimony to become the Chief of the National Guard Bureau, we actually looked across our entire formation, because my concern is I wanted to make sure that our organization reflected the diversity of the communities where we come from. And actually, it was a very good news story. When we look at the lower levels of our organization, we are very representative of the diversity of the communities where we come from. But when we looked at the higher levels of leadership within our organization, really the E8s and E9s, Master Sergeants, Command Sergeant Majors, and also our colonels and our general officers, we realized that that level of diversity we had at the lower level in our organizations did not continue. And that is something we absolutely need to address. I want to make sure that the diversity of our communities expands not only from the lowest level, but to the highest level of our organization. And so over the course of the next year, Chief Whitehead and I will be doing a lot of visits across the country, and also be working with our state's adjutants general and senior enlisted advisors. Because what we're looking for is the things that we're doing within the states to help promote that, to identify those individuals with the greatest potential, to follow up with them, to mentor them, and to give those leadership opportunities to ascend to the highest levels of our organization, because it's absolutely critical that they're reflective at every level of our organization.
Well, thanks for that, Chief. And as an Adjutant General, I completely concur that when you look out at our formations, we are by, of, and through the community. We represent our communities. We're there every day with them, and you know this as your time, during your time in Oregon as the Adjutant General. All the people in Oregon are super proud of what you're doing, as well as all of us from the other 53. Couldn't be happier that a fellow TAG is standing there today for the first time in over 2 decades. So it's just so great for you to take the time to come be here today. I want to just say as well that your experience will improve trust, create rapport, and build back the Guard. Our proudest accomplishment in the last 20 years has been the advancement of the Empowerment Act. And sir, we're counting on you to take it to even new levels, to prove us all right that having a voice at the table will equally advocate for the great things that we know our Guardsmen do every day. And before you leave us today, we want to give you a challenge coin. In this physically distanced environment, I've been taught at home, we don't call it social distancing because we're still going to be friends. In this physically distanced environment, we've created a very unique coin. It's in the shape of a laptop to memorialize our first ever virtual conference. We have one for each of our speakers, and you will be given one on your way out today. And I just want to thank you again for your service and dedication over the last 35 plus years. And we know that the next 4 years, you're going to take Guard Nation to even greater heights. Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.